All right. Hey, everyone. Welcome back. As we gear up to mark a major milestone, the 75th anniversary of the Election Commission of India
Oh, wow.
and National Voters Day, it's the perfect time to really dive into a topic that's uh, super relevant for us as citizens and, of course, especially crucial for all you future civil servants out there.
Absolutely.
The integrity of India's elections, right? It's like the bedrock of our democracy.
Yeah.
A recent editorial in the Hindu kind of got me thinking.
Mm.
They took a deep dive into the 2024 Maharashtra State Elections, and it raises some pretty thought-provoking questions about the vision B.R. Ambedkar had for our electoral system.
It's amazing how relevant Ambedkar's concerns from way back in 1949 still are today. During those constituent assembly debates, he specifically warned about the potential for manipulation of electoral rolls.
Yeah, he did. It's like he could see the future or something.
What?
Exactly were his worries.
Well, he was worried about two sides of the same coin, you could say, excluding specific communities to suppress their vote, and then on the flip side, mass inclusion of voters just to swing the results one way or another.
So basically, he was advocating for a level playing field where every eligible voter has a voice.
Exactly. And no one is unfairly excluded or added in. Ambedkar's vision was all about an electoral system that's free from any kind of executive overreach or bias. And it's this ideal of a truly fair and representative election process that we need to keep in mind as we look at what happened in Maharashtra.
Okay, so let's get into the specifics of that Maharashtra case. The Hindu editorial points out some discrepancies in the 2024 state elections. It's kind of concerning.
The first thing that jumps out is the sheer number of registered voters. The Election Commission of India, the ECI, they recorded a whopping 9.7 crore voters, and get this, that number actually surpasses the estimated adult population of 9.54 crore, according to the Ministry of Health.
Wait, hold on. More registered voters than there are adults in the entire state. That doesn't sound right.
Exactly. While you always expect minor discrepancies because of population fluctuations and stuff, this difference of 16 lakh voters, that's a pretty significant anomaly. Raises questions about the accuracy of those voter rolls.
And it gets even more interesting when you factor in the rate of voter registration leading up to these elections. Like, how quickly were new voters being added?
So between 2019 and 2024, Maharashtra added about 32 lakh new voters, which seems pretty reasonable. But then in just the 6 months right after the Lok Sabha elections, bam, a whopping 48 lakh new voters were added. It's a huge jump.
A 50% jump in just 6 months compared to what the previous 5 years? Is this like some incredible voter mobilization drive, or is there something fishy going on here? This is like a question straight out of a UPSC paper.
It really is. And to make things even more complicated, the Election Commission hasn't been very clear about how these new registrations were verified.
Okay, so we have a lack of transparency, which just adds fuel to the fire about potential manipulation. I mean, if all these new voters were legit, wouldn't it be statistically unlikely for them to overwhelmingly favor a single political alliance? This feels like a potential argument for a mains answer.
Yeah, and it directly echoes those concerns Ambedkar raised all those years ago. The possibility of influencing election outcomes by manipulating voter rolls, it's a real threat to our democracy.
So, given these concerns, what's the ECI's response been? Have they addressed these discrepancies?
Their response has been silence.
Silence. They haven't offered any explanations or data regarding the voter registration process. That's worrying.
It is. They did confirm the 48 lakh new registrations, but there's been zero transparency about how those were verified. This silence just erodes public trust in the whole electoral process.
Now, some people might say that it's the opposition party's job to catch these irregularities. Is that a valid argument?
It's a point that comes up often, but it doesn't let the ECI off the hook. The ECI is ultimately responsible for making sure our elections are free and fair, regardless of what political parties are doing.
It's like saying, hey, the alarm didn't go off, so it's not our fault the bank got robbed. The ECI is the guardian of our elections. They're supposed to be proactive, not just react after the fact.
Yeah.
This is such a crucial distinction to understand for anyone who wants to be a part of India's administrative machinery.
Exactly. And that leads us to a really critical question, especially for future policymakers. What can we actually do to prevent this kind of potential manipulation from happening in the future? How do we build a system that's more resilient and truly upholds the integrity of our elections?
That's the million-dollar question. And you know what? We're going to delve into those potential solutions and safeguards in the next segment. Don't go anywhere.
So we've uncovered some potential cracks in the foundation, and now the exciting part is figuring out how to patch them up, how to make sure those cracks don't turn into major fault lines.
Right. Calling out the problems is one thing, but finding solutions, that's the real challenge. So where do we even begin?
Well, I think the first step, and maybe the most obvious one, is transparency.
Okay, transparency, I like it. But what does that actually look like? How do we make the ECI more transparent?
Imagine if the ECI just put all the data out there, They could proactively release all the details on voter registration data, not just raw numbers, but the whole process, how they verify stuff. Maybe even do some statistical analysis on voting patterns. Think about it. If you're a future administrator, having access to this kind of information would be huge. You could spot irregularities early on. You could make informed policy decisions to make the system even stronger.
It's like having a clear audit trail,
Yeah.
right? Makes it way harder for any manipulation to slip through the cracks.
Exactly.
But data is only good if you know how to use it, right?
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. And that's where your analytical skills come in. As UPSC aspirants, being able to analyze and interpret data, it's not just about acing the exams. It's about being effective in those future roles, shaping policies and governing.
So transparency is key. The Hindu editorial also brings up Aadhaar integration as a possible solution. Could you break that down for us a little?
Aadhaar integration, if it's done right, could be a game changer. Linking voter IDs to Aadhaar, it could help get rid of duplicate registrations or fraudulent ones. It could also make the whole verification process so much smoother, more efficient, and potentially more secure.
It definitely sounds promising on the surface, but what about the potential downsides? All the concerns about privacy and data security. How do we address those?
That's a really important point. We can't just blindly implement something like this without thinking about privacy. We need to look at different models, see what other countries have done successfully. For example, some countries have systems where your biometric data is locked down, super secure, only used for authentication. That way, individual privacy is protected.
So it's not just about using technology, it's about using it responsibly and ethically.
Exactly.
We need to strike that balance between security and inclusion, right?
Absolutely. The goal is to make the system more secure, but without accidentally disenfranchising eligible voters. Think about it. What if someone in a remote area has trouble with biometric authentication? Their right to vote shouldn't be compromised because of that.
That actually reminds me of the debates around the right to privacy and the right to vote. It's something that comes up a lot in the polity syllabus. It's so interesting to see how real-world issues connect back to what we study.
It really does. It shows you just how important it is to understand these issues, not just theoretically, but also in practice.
Okay, so Aadhaar integration, done right, could be a really valuable tool, but it's not a cure-all. What other safeguards could we put in place to really protect our elections?
One crucial aspect is making sure the ECI is truly independent. Imagine if the ECI had all the resources and authority they needed, free from any kind of political pressure. That would be a huge win for free and fair elections. We need to give them the power to really investigate any allegations of wrongdoing, and enforce the electoral laws effectively.
That brings us back to Ambedkar's vision, doesn't it?
Yeah.
An election commission that's truly independent and impartial. A real guardian of our democratic values.
Exactly. But here's where things get even more interesting. The responsibility doesn't just lie with the ECI. It's a shared responsibility. Citizens have a crucial role to play too, in safeguarding the integrity of our elections.
Okay, I get it. We've talked about the ECI, we've talked about Aadhaar, but how can regular citizens like you and me actually make a difference?
The most important thing is to be informed voters. We need to understand the issues, really scrutinize the candidates, and hold them accountable. We should know our rights as voters and be on the lookout for any attempts to, suppress or manipulate the vote.
So we can't just sit back and expect the ECI to handle everything. We have to participate, demand accountability.
Exactly.
Just like Ambedkar envisioned an active citizenry. That's the foundation of a truly democratic system.
Couldn't have said it better myself. And that participation, it can take many forms. You can volunteer as an election observer. You can raise awareness about electoral issues in your community, or even just have these conversations with your friends and family, get people thinking and talking about it.
So our understanding of these issues, even just discussing them, can actually contribute to positive change.
Absolutely.
That's pretty empowering.
An engaged citizenry is the best defense against anyone trying to undermine our democracy. And for UPSC aspirants, this kind of active engagement, it's more than just a civic duty. It's a vital part of understanding the very nation you aspire to serve.
It all comes full circle, back to Ambedkar's vision. We've looked at potential problems, we've explored solutions, but that underlying principle, the commitment to free and fair elections, that's what it all boils down to.
Absolutely. And as we move forward, the big question is Maharashtra an isolated case, or does it point to bigger vulnerabilities in our electoral system?
That's a great question. And it's one we're going to dive into right after this. We're back. And yeah, that question we left off with, it's really been on my mind. Is what we saw in Maharashtra just an isolated incident? Or could it be like a sign of something bigger,
Yep.
some broader vulnerabilities in our electoral system across India? It's a bit unnerving when you really think about it.
It's definitely a valid concern. The Maharashtra case, it's like a wake-up call. It's urging us to take a closer look and see if similar vulnerabilities might exist in other states, too.
Right.
Things we've been talking about, transparency, the accuracy of those voter rolls, the influence of technology, it's all relevant across the country.
So what can India learn from this? How do we prevent what happened in Maharashtra from becoming like a recurring pattern? It feels like a really important question, especially for those prepping for the UPSC mains exam.
I think the biggest takeaway here is that we can't be complacent. We can't just assume that our elections are somehow immune to manipulation. We need to constantly be evaluating our systems, looking for those weak points, and then proactively implementing safeguards before something happens.
It's like a continuous process of improvement, right?
Exactly.
Always trying to make the system stronger, more resilient.
Yeah.
And that's where we come in, right? We, the citizens, we have a role to play that goes beyond just casting our votes.
You got it. We need to cultivate this culture of vigilance where we're demanding transparency, questioning anything that seems off, and holding our elected officials accountable. It's about being active participants in our democracy, not just passive bystanders.
And all of this as we're celebrating the 75th anniversary of the Election Commission of India. It's a moment for reflection, but also a time for action. How do we make sure that Ambedkar's vision of a truly free and fair electoral system becomes a reality?
It's going to take all of us working together. The ECI needs to be independent and empowered. Political parties need to be ethical and responsible. And we, the citizens, need to be informed, engaged, and hold everyone accountable.
Okay, so let's do a quick recap here, especially for all those future civil servants out there prepping for their UPSC exams. We started by exploring Ambedkar's vision for a just and impartial electoral system, highlighting his concerns about potential manipulation of those voter rolls. Then we examined the 2024 Maharashtra elections, where the discrepancies in voter numbers and those registration rates, they raised some serious red flags about the integrity of the process.
Right. And we talk about the ECI's role in ensuring those free and fair elections and the need for greater transparency and accountability. We also looked at potential solutions like Aadhaar integration and the importance of strengthening the ECI's independence.
And most importantly, we emphasized that safeguarding India's democracy, it's a shared responsibility. It requires active participation from informed citizens. It's not just about knowing this stuff for the exams, it's about understanding it as future policymakers.
I think this has been a really great discussion, a deep dive into a really critical aspect of Indian democracy. And remember, this is just the beginning.
Exactly.
I encourage all of you to keep digging deeper, explore additional resources, have those thought-provoking conversations about the challenges and the opportunities that lie ahead.
Well, thank you so much for joining us today for this deep dive into such a crucial topic. I hope you all found it informative and thought-provoking. And if you enjoyed this episode, don't forget to hit that subscribe button and share it with your friends, especially those fellow UPSC aspirants. And remember, the information we've discussed today was based on a recent editorial from The Hindu. Always check out our show notes for links to the source material so you can keep the learning going. Until next time, keep those brains engaged, keep questioning, and never lose that spirit of inquiry.